Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about being frozen in time. And what exactly does that mean, and how that happens more often than we think? And what do we do to get out of it? Because when we're frozen in time, I'm going to give a couple of examples of when I was in a human consciousness, and one when I was what I would call semi-conscious. I really hadn't started my ascension, but I was going through my awakening. So I got divorced in a summer. I don't remember what year or summer it was, but it was in a summer. And I remember going into October of that year, and I didn't really know if I was divorced. I might not have been. I might have just been, we were getting divorced, we were separated or whatever. But I remember in October of that year, I was still wearing sandals. And it was really cold. Maybe it was November. And one of my friends at the time was like, why are you wearing, it's November, why are you still wearing sandals? And I think I was still wearing more summery type clothes. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, what month is it? Like, you have no idea because you get stuck. And when you have a traumatic event, a human traumatic event, and something that's really going to push you forward in a lot of ways, get you out of certain timelines, but our human is going to register them as traumatic. It was something that brought up a lot of emotion, and that's what human traumatic is for me. It's a lot of emotion to it, it's a lot of a story to it, it's a lot of clearing to this. It could be a massive timeline ending, it could be the death of something or someone. And we get stuck in that. We get stuck in the story, we get stuck in the emotions, and because it's so much to feel it, we don't really want to feel. Our human doesn't really want to feel anyway. So we get what, I'm going to say, the industry term. I've heard it term this, and I think I even might have called it this too. We get kind of frozen, and we don't even know, what month it is. We don't even realize we're still wearing summer clothes, and we're pretty much getting into wintertime. Because we're still stuck in that time. We haven't cleared it. We don't want to feel it. We kind of push it down, but we're still living in the story. There's a way we can live in the story and not release the emotion. And that to me is what it means when we get stuck in that moment. We settle there, and because there's some comfort in still being in the story, we stay there. And you see some people stay and be frozen in a time for years. And you see it sometimes for decades for some people. And they never quite move out of it. So it's important to see when we're in it. And this, like I said, it happens even after we become semi-awake. I remember I had a relationship end years and years later. This is probably another, 8 years later down the road. And for that whole half of that next year, I was kind of stuck in that time. Like, I don't remember anything that happened that year. I was still stuck in that event of how that had ended and how that reality had kind of collapsed for me. Even though being able to kind of understand why, but not totally at that time being able to understand why, because like I said, I was more semi-conscious at that point. But we kind of get stuck there. And when we get frozen in moments, sometimes we don't even know we're frozen in a moment until we look back and don't remember. You're going to have a lot of years you go, I don't remember that year. Like, I don't remember that year because I was still living in the moment that happened a year before that. I was still processing what had just happened for months and months and months and months later. So we're living in a past moment. We get frozen in a past moment, and we're not living in the present moment. There was a book I read years and years ago, and I was going to look it up before I came on, but I didn't. But there's if anyone's read this book, it was something about a broken heart, some kind of book like that. You can tell the theme of a lot of my frozen in time moments, what they were about. But it was, the author was talking about being like on the sidewalk and sitting on the sidewalk and crying and being so sad and just crying profusely, just taking out the garbage. And there was a part of her that just looked around and said, there's nothing going on. There's no reason to cry. It's a beautiful summer day. There was nothing going on in her life in that moment, but she was still processing and grieving a past moment. And it does rob us of the present moment, which robs us of creation, of what we're creating in this moment. What's in front of us is what we've already created. It is sort of old news. It doesn't really so much matter. So when we talk about upgrading realities, we don't so much focus on the one in front of us because that's the reality we created from our energy signature before that moment. prior to that moment from that other consciousness. The one we're in now creates our next moment. It's going to create what we're going to be doing later on. That's why we will see a lot of times, I think I did a video on it, we kind of live from the future. You get to a certain point in your consciousness where you know what you're going to be doing 5 years from now, and you're working toward that. I always get things early. You know, if my godson's in 2nd grade, I'm getting him a 3rd and 4th grade book. And it's just funny because I'm like, yeah, we'll get to that, you know, but I'm always kind of living ahead in a sense. So when these timelines come, I'm kind of ready for them. But we do kind of live from the future. And we stop getting frozen in a moment because we start to understand once we go through enough of these moments that freezing in them keeps us stuck in it. And a lot of times we just don't want to process that moment. We don't want to go through the grieving. We don't want to let the moment go. When you're stuck in the story, you're technically frozen in the moment. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm not stuck in the story because I want to be in the story. Because it's not a happy story. You know, this is not a Cinderella ending story. Why am I stuck in a story that feels like it's more of just a horror movie than some kind of romantic comedy fun moment? Why do I want to stay stuck there? Because we're getting something out of the story. You know, I did a video, I guess maybe a couple days ago, I don't remember. And I was talking about, we get something out of it. We're playing a certain role in the story. And if we're the victim in the story, when we tell the story, we get attention, we get sympathy, we get a pat on the back, we get, yeah, you were wronged. You know, all the stuff our human wants to hear. The stories are always for the human. And when we're placating someone else's human, we listen to the story. And sometimes people just want you to listen to the story. And we'll play that role out for someone. We'll listen to the story, knowing it's just a story. It's not true. It's the human spin on the story. You know, none of these are kind of the true story. These are all the spin on what someone else thought, the spin on what someone else was. These are not the actual story beats. These are just parts of the story. When we're in a part of the story that we don't want to process, it's robbing us of what is going on right now and what we can create right now. And that is the biggest thing to remember when we get in these moments. And how do we unstick? How do we process? How do we feel it when we don't want to feel it? There'll be times in your waking and ascension that you just can't process it. You know, we've talked about closing out realities, but you really don't close them out, you kind of walk away. And in a way, we're kind of putting a pin in that moment. You know, we're not reliving it. We're putting a pin in it and saying, I'm going to get back to you. I'm not going to rehash the story. I'm not going to live in this moment. I'm going to go live in a different moment. But I haven't quite processed this, because if I could close it out from my highest aspect, I would process it. I'd be able to move on. But if I can't do that, I'm just going to move on, because I don't have the consciousness yet to close this out. And what our universe will do is bring other things around. You know, it'll bring something similar around. Maybe, you know, months later, maybe years later, say, okay, can you close it out? And if we have gained enough higher consciousness at that moment, we can see the connection between that other moment. That I never closed that out, so now this is my chance to close this out. Because I put a pin in it here, it's now coming back here, because now I have to close it out. Can I do it now? And now am I able to do it? Or am I still going to be sitting here like, I still can't do it? I'm still got to wait. It'll come back around again. I also did a video about identifying your program. And the minute we say, release this program, I see the program, I'm done with this program, get prepared for your universe to send you that program around again, as an opportunity for you to go back into that program, an opportunity for you to go back into that story. Because really, when we're frozen in time, we're attached to that program, we're attached to that story, we're attached to that identity. We're still going to be playing it out in every reality we're in. We just don't see the similarities to it. So be ready for that too. Be ready for when you say, I'm ready to clear this, I'm ready to let go of this, for something to come back around. Either the exact same situation or something just trigger that program again. You know, if we say we're going to let that go, I'm not going to play a victim anymore, be ready for a situation to come up where you could go right back into that victim role. Like almost immediately. The minute you say, I'm clearing this, clear it, purge it, reprogram it, I'm done with this program, no more, be ready for your universe to bring you another one. And that's just to see if you're really serious. Are you really serious? Are you really going to clear it? Are you really not going to go back into the story? being stuck. Now, I'm gonna preface this again. Technically, we never can be really stuck. We can be stalled. We can feel like we're stuck because we're raising at such a small, minimal thing. We're going through a lot of physical stuff to raise our vibration a minuscule amount because we don't want to let the big stuff go. We don't want to focus on the big stuff. We don't want to focus on childhood stuff. We don't want to focus on any of the stuff to clear it, bring it into the present moment. Now, you could have had a childhood you feel that air quote trauma of later on. On one aspect, you might know, okay, those were our contracts. Everyone was playing that role out. I understand that, but I still feel like I need to clear. My inner child needs to clear. We can bring that into the present moment. What do I need to do right now to honor what my body's trying to clear? Well, what do I need to do in this moment to honor my inner child, to honor my, feminine aspect more, my divine feminine? What do I need to step into that? Because feminine and divine feminine, they're not the same thing. Masculine and divine masculine are not the same thing. They're different. One is a higher consciousness version of a human consciousness energy, in a sense, a human consciousness aspect. Masculine energy is a very blaming energy, whereas a feminine energy is usually a very whiny energy. And when you get to your higher aspects in divine masculine, divine feminine is just a being energy, being with yourself, being able to set in the moments and enjoying the present moment and creating from that moment, whereas divine masculine is actually doing. It's actually boots on the ground, let me do it. Some things, some realities you're in your divine feminine, some are going to be in your divine masculine. Now it's time for me to do this. I've set in this, I've anchored this aspect in, now I got to act from this aspect. If we're not actually doing anything, we're not anchoring in our divine masculine yet. And it doesn't matter if you're boy or girl. We all have both. We don't just have one. So the more we go through these moments and the more we go through looking back, and I will guarantee anyone, you can go back and remember when you got frozen. And some of us might not even realize we're still frozen. You can think we're out of it, and then we're like, I'm so kind of caught on that. And a lot of people got frozen during the COVID realities. That was a big traumatic event for so many of the collectives that they kind of stayed frozen. A lot of us kind of stayed frozen where you were talking about years and years and years and years later. And everyone was still acting like they were back in that original when it began because it was so traumatic for so much of the collective when those realities came through. But a lot of those realities just came through to clear stuff out. People left their jobs, people left their spouses, people left relationships. People moved to different areas of the country. People realized what really mattered to them in those moments. And a lot of people's lives shifted and they never went back the same again. Everyone thought we'll get back to normal. No one ever got back to normal because there was a new normal now. People were able to get out of obligations they couldn't get out of before. And now they could. They could see who responded with their highest aspects that they could grapple at that moment, that they could grab in that moment, that they could touch on in that moment and show compassion and humanity, and who went into hoarding. And it was all about, and scarcity, and I have to take all this stuff for me, and I don't really care if anybody else has anything. You saw how everyone was clearing, how everyone was reacting to these realities. And for a lot of people, they were kind of stuck in them. And you can still see people stuck in those realities when they haven't they're still stuck in those moments. So we all have things we've been stuck in. We all have moments we've gotten stuck in. But we can unstick. And like I said, knowing that we're technically not stuck, we're clearing, but at a really small rate because we don't want to let it go. We have to look at why we don't want to let it go. What are we getting from it? And that is the first thing we always want to look at when we're in anything that we know is not highest line and we don't want to let go. What's in it for me? What am I getting out of it? And I'll have so many people come and say to me, well, I'm not getting anything out of it. Why would I want to hold on to that? We're getting something out of it or we don't hold on to it. Our ego gets something from it. And our challenge can be, and our job really, when we're talking about consciousness, is we're responsible for our own consciousness. We're responsible for let me identify that. What am I getting out of this? Why am I keep telling this stupid story a zillion times? When the story, we get to a certain point in our consciousness, we know the story's not even true. That person didn't do anything to me. I was not a victim there. That was a contract. We were all supposed to play out those roles. We played them out. The reality dissolved. Everyone went their own way. Why am I creating a story I know is not consciously even true anymore? Why am I doing that? And why am I playing it out? Why am I still talking about the stuff that I know is not the reason I went through that reality? Because where our ego is still getting something out of it. It wants, our ego, our human always wants us to stay stuck somewhere. It does not want us to move, because when we move away from it. And it doesn't want us to do that. Moving away from it means it's no longer the head of the council that's making the choices. You know, we might hear our ego say something, but we don't listen to it. We know, oh, it's like listening to a child make major life choices. You know, we don't do that. We don't look at a 2-year-old that's just coming into his ego, who wants everything, make a life choice for someone. You know, that's not what we do, because children, when they start coming into that, we're kind of rediscovering that program in a sense. They start disconnecting as they get older and older and older, and that's their agreement too, to go back into that human experience. And some people want to call it an experiment, depending on where you're at, whether you're in galactic or whether you're in your soul aspects. You know, when you see that little selfish child, and it's so funny to see humans say, oh, it's a little selfish child, but our whole human ego is a little selfish child. You know, I want what I want. I don't really care what anybody else wants. I just want what I want. And so many times we feel like we're on the other end of that. But if something in our reality gets shaken up, then all of a sudden we pay attention to it. I always say, you know, no one wants to say it's persecution if they're not getting persecuted against. But the minute it hits them, all of a sudden it's more serious. This shit got serious really fast when it started to affect me. That's our human ego, because it's all about us. When you get into ascension and serving humanity through ascension, it's not about us anymore. You know, it's not about what our human wants to do. A lot of realities I've had to do, I didn't want to do. They were not sexy. They were not the ones I wanted to go do, but I had to, because I knew I was supposed to go do them. And going in there and plowing through them and working through my stuff while I was there was the quickest way for me to get to the other ones that I wanted to go do. Because I couldn't do those hanging on to all this stuff. And we know we are hanging on to that stuff, whether it's with, you know, ex-relationships, whether it's with our parents, whether it's with our siblings, whether it's with, you know, a job experience we had, whether it's, and we're just talking this dimension, our human, we're not even talking at this point, multidimensional clearing from all dimensions at the same time. I mean, that can come a little bit later, where we're clearing all our dimensions at once. Then we start getting hit with all the karma we've ever created over every dimension. It can get heavy. And anyone who says it's just not at those parts yet. So I think we're gonna end it at that. But I think that's a kind of a good overview. So if you're feeling like you're frozen, or maybe in denial that you're frozen, look at what you're wearing. Are we still wearing summer clothes in the wintertime? Are we still wearing open-toed shoes when it's 25 degrees outside because we don't even know what month it is and we just have no idea where we are anymore? Now, part of that is also clearing, you know, everything is very multi-layered. So there is a part of that where we're clearing and there is no time. And when we get kind of, I don't want to say kind of jerked back into some kind of time frame where, wait, yeah, it is cold outside. There is a part where we detach because we don't want to feel it, which it also goes back to getting stuck in that moment, but it also can detach from realities to connect within. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. So really look at where we are with that. You know, am I frozen? Am I detaching to connect more with myself? And I really just kind of, I'm so detached from everything external right now. I don't even know what month it is. It doesn't even matter. What am I wearing? You know, I have no idea. Because there are different consciousness shades and all that. There's different consciousnesses within a dimension. We could be in beginning of the fourth dimension where we're frozen in a moment, and toward the end where we're more detaching from the moment. Detaching to raise our vibration and connect from within. It still might all be in the fourth dimensional timeline, but we're in a different consciousness in the beginning than in the end. You know, that's why it can be challenging when we try to mesh with people and we think, oh, we're all in the same place. Well, we're not all in the same place. Even if we're in the same dimension, we can be in a different consciousness within that dimension. We're not all in the same place. And when we start really picking up on that, that's when it becomes more challenging in a sense to forge relationships. That's why I feel like that's one reason why our human kind of grieves the old ones, because in a way, even though they weren't satisfying on a soul level, we felt it easier to connect because we weren't really feeling all the things underneath that were going to implode it at the end, you know? So we kind of grieve that in a while, and that can keep us stuck because we're grieving not only that situation, but knowing that's the last one we're going to have like that. Like I know one I grieved really hard, and it felt really kind of over grieving in a sense for what the relationship was. But I can see now that I was also grieving that I won't have any more like that. I will not have any more human relationships to that extent. That was my last one where I would be semi-conscious and in that type of relationship that I would have no more. So you're grieving that one, you're grieving all the ones you've had, you're grieving across time and space, you're grieving all your dimensions. So some of these things can feel really heavy, and there's a reason for that, and we don't want to judge if we are, yeah, so what, I got on sandals and it's November, yeah, I'm working through it. It doesn't really matter so much about, we don't want our judgment to come into it. That doesn't matter. We just want to recognize it and really be honest about where we are with it. Where are we falling with this? What am I really doing? Am I really am I keep telling the story to the point where now I'm just kind of sick of the story, but I kind of still want to tell it. Maybe I'll tweak it a little bit and go tell a stranger the story because it makes me feel better to keep getting it out. Once again, it is a form of clearing. It's just it's the long game of clearing. That is the long game of doing it. That is not the short game. So, okay. I think that's a good way to end it. Keep practicing the art of intuition.